Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Alrighty, hello there everybody and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Marcus Vargas, and I hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are still healthy, safe, and sane. The quarantine has, no doubt been exhausting for us all, but, it's very, very important to stay positive and look at everything on the bright side. Okay, let's get into today's show, guys. The first segment I have for you is we're going to be talking about some rookie rankings for the fantasy football season. Later on, we will be talking more schedule stuff, and of course, there'll be some more after that. But I haven't really done a true sort of rookie rankings list for the fantasy football 2020 season, so I kind of wanted to do that just to give you guys my take on the rookies and where I think. And how I think all these guys are going to do, who will be the most fantasy football relevant, so on and so forth. Of course, my ideas on these rookies have definitely changed, seeing where they have landed, what situations they're in, possibly, if, say, just by chance, a certain running back is joined a team where, the running back room is kind of crowded, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just get straight into it, guys. The rookie who I think is going to be the most successful, or maybe I should go backwards. Right? Yes, I'll do that. Let's do it. Nah. I'll just start from, I'll start from number one. The rookie that I have, guys, as the top rookie for fantasy football in the 2020 season is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back from LSU, who was drafted in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, guys, of course, I know you all know I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, but I try to be as, objective, subjective, whichever one means I'm unbiased, as possible on the show here. And I'm not just picking this kid because I'm excited to have him on the team, because I'm excited to watch what he's going to do, but because I think, he went to the perfect team you can go to as a pass catching running back in the league right now. He went to this super high-flying offense, quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback in football at the moment, and, being, talked about as probably the best pass-catching back out of the class, a shifty guy. Of course, he doesn't have the craziest, straight line or breakaway speed, but he can make plays happen, and when you're being compared to Brian Westbrook, that's not all bad either. So, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is my number one. I think... No, he's not going to start off, straight as a starter, right away. But I think, he certainly has a chance to. He certainly has a chance to take that spot during camp or, during the season when, Damian Williams kind of just does what Damian Williams does. He can be productive at times. Certainly showed up during the postseason, and I was very, very happy with that. But he hasn't been the most, elite kind of running back, and certainly hasn't really fit into the Kansas City Chiefs offense as a guy like Kareem Hunt, where we were still spreading the ball around a ton, but he was also racking up a ton of yardage, a ton of touchdown production, working well with all of that. Damian Williams really hasn't done much. At number two, guys, this is where I'm going to have Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, Alabama. Now, I know there's a lot of debate, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, who's the better receiver, who should be drafted first, etc., etc. But I think Jerry Jeudy here is in a better position to succeed fantasy football-wise. let's not forget, he's pretty fast. He wasn't, not crazy burners like Ruggs, but 4.45 40. He's a great route runner. He's probably, going to be behind Courtland Sutton in the depth chart, probably lining up in the slot. But I think here he has better chances to succeed, especially in fantasy football, over a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who's, on a team that didn't really need any more wide receivers. I think, he has a lot of potential. Of course, he's going to start, we'll have to see what happens with Drew Lock and how they build chemistry and a connection. Of course, we have to hope Drew Lock is going to be a serviceable quarterback, but I think he has a ton of potential, and I think, while, we're going to have to worry about, them running the football a ton, with Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, I think Jerry Jeudy can become a great complement to Courtland Sutton and be a productive fantasy football wide receiver. That being said, at number 3, I'm actually going with another running back here, guys. Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin. This guy was super, ultra, hyper productive in college, and he seemingly was a steal. Not that he's the greatest, pass catching back, but I mean the guy is just sort of, a pure running back. He's gonna run into contact. He did amazing at the combine. 4.39 speed in the 40-yard dash, guys. It's pretty insane. I know he goes into, a running back room that's sort of crowded with Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines. And Nyheim Hines is definitely going to be the guy catching passes. But I think, he's definitely going to have some potential to become, a very, reliable fantasy football starting running back. Maybe he's your RB2. And then, if he produces like he produced in college, he'll definitely be an RB1. But they've said, it's been reported that, they're not trying to view, these two running backs as a 1-2 punch. They're viewing them as a 1-1 punch. So I guess, you can kind of say, one's not going to be, they're going to get equal touches and have equal chances, to put their impact on the game. It was also, Colts offensive coordinator Nick Sirianni told the team's official website that, quote, they have some different running styles, but again, they're both complete backs. I think that's a fantastic problem to have, is to have two guys like that you can feed the football to. It's only going to help our running game. So a little bit concerning for Indy's wide receivers because it seems like, they're going to be focusing on running the football a ton. But good for fantasy football managers. I think Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor can end up being a successful backfield, sort of like how Mark Ingram and Kamara were. I know they're not similar to, they're not exactly the same as that, but, both productive runners of the football. If Jonathan Taylor becomes a clear-cut favorite, he's definitely going to be very, very productive. Okay, in the number 4 slot is where I have CeeDee Lamb. And I think maybe I'll just do a top 10. Maybe I'm going to do top 15. But for number 4, CeeDee Lamb here. And the only reason I have him here, under those other guys is because he goes to a team that's pretty stacked at wide receiver. I think he's a great complete wide receiver, not as fast as Jerry Jeudy, didn't run that at least in the 40. And I know, a lot of people like to say, the combine isn't everything, but, it does tell a lot. But he basically is going to fill in the role of Randall Cobb, right? And I know, a lot of people didn't really care for Randall Cobb, or, you weren't relying on him to win fantasy football games. And to me, it's just hard to imagine CeeDee Lamb, being the great receiver that he is, though, coming in and, overtaking Amari Cooper or even Michael Gallup pretty early on. I think it's a guy, you're definitely going to have to, wait on, see what happens with the potential. But, I think flex kind of guy for sure. A guy you're going to take late. I don't think you should be taking him in the middle of the draft. Definitely not early in the draft unless you're just taking a shot in the dark and you're the luckiest guy on earth. But, right now CeeDee Lamb has a lot of potential, but the, ceiling isn't looking too high at the moment. Okay. At number 5 here, guys, I'm a running back guy, so I'm putting running backs ahead. DeAndre Swift. I have DeAndre Swift here, guys, running back out of Georgia. Honestly, I understand a lot of people are talking about the Lions having a running back by committee, but I see DeAndre Swift taking over this backfield. He was productive as a rusher. He was productive as a receiver, while he was in college, during his full career in college. And he just an all around, he's a great running back. He's definitely a guy I think who can become a workhorse kind of guy. 4.48 40-yard dash. And I think, hopefully if he can stay healthy, they'll definitely want to rely on him, rather than carry on Johnson. I feel like, maybe to start off the season, we'll see Kerryon Johnson be the starter, going to be the more frequent guy. Maybe DeAndre Swift comes in, third down kind of guy, pass catching kind of guy. But once they see what Swift can do and how explosive he can be, they might say, you know what, this is the guy we're going to go with. You draft a running back early in the second round, you expect to use him. So I like DeAndre Swift here, number 5. Definitely, to me, going to be a valuable fantasy football running back, even as a rookie. Okay, at number 6 here, excuse me, here's where I'm going to put Henry Ruggs. And while, I'm not super sure of how well the Raiders can do with Derek Carr, if they plan to use this guy sort of like a Tyreek Hill, I definitely think, he's going to be very, very productive. Just because, I know what speed can do as long as you hone in that speed, and, you can run those routes and become a complete receiver. Can be absolutely lethal. He's super, super fast. What was a 4.27 40-yard dash? I think, the Raiders definitely have a plan here in mind. I know a lot of people thought they might have been taking Judy, might have been taking CeeDee Lamb, but they go with this guy. This definitely was their guy, because they passed up on those other 2 wide receivers who were, touted as the top 2 for sure. And I think, I don't think he's not going to immediately jump in and be the Tyreek Hill of present. But Tyreek Hill was pretty productive even in his rookie year. I know he was more of a special teams kind of guy. But if they can sort of accelerate Henry Ruggs' development, to become more of a pass catcher early on, I think he'll be definitely productive, definitely worth flex consideration. Okay. At number 7, guys, here's where I'm putting Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I understand that, the Minnesota Vikings are they're a run first kind of team, but I think, with their, replacement for Stephon Diggs that they got here, he's going to be very, very productive. Definitely see a lot of targets because, the teams are going to be worried about Adam Thielen. He's going to draw a lot of double teams, and this can be sort of a Antonio Brown Juju type of scenario. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, Adam Thielen's Antonio Brown, but I think this could be very, very interesting, and Justin Jefferson's going to benefit just from the fact that there's so many other threats on the team. We do have to remember that, guys. Even though, they are a run-heavy team, when teams are worried about the run so much, play action busts you wide open, right? So we do have to keep that in mind. So at number 7, Justin Jefferson here. Of course, I don't know, no projections for him to become the top guy in Minnesota, but I think he can be productive. Okay. With that, though, guys, we're going to take a short break. And when we get back, we'll continue the rankings. I think I'll go maybe a top 15, but we'll take a short break. We'll get right back to it.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness, or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website. Then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness, or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty guys, back like I never left. Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We just got done getting to number 7, I believe it was, in my rookie rankings for the next fantasy football season. So we'll just continue straight up here with number 8, guys. This is where I have Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the reason why I have him here is because I think he fits very well into the San Francisco 49ers offense. He's great running after the catch. They're a West Coast team. This is definitely what they like. I know that George Kittle and Deebo Samuel are going to be the top guys here, but I think he has some potential. I don't think, he's going to be a huge factor in the offense, but I think, he's going to have some solid fantasy football games that will service you, at the flex position if you want to take a chance on him. I think Deebo Samuel is going to definitely become the number 1 guy. With Emmanuel Sanders out, Brandon Ayuk definitely has potential to break out into something special there, but nothing too crazy, but I think he's going to be very, very serviceable in the offense. Sort of, I guess you can think of, sort of how they had Kendrick Bourne. He was a guy who had some good games. Not like, he wasn't a guy that you were eyeing up every week, but a guy who could definitely get it done. Unfortunately, of course, Ayuk is going to be, competing with Kendrick Bourne, but, he definitely has some big play potential, and he could definitely become fantasy relevant over time, especially in that productive offense. All right. Number 9. Here's where I have T. Higgins. Now, this might be a bit low, and I know T. Higgins was a very, he's a productive guy, a great wide receiver, but he's on the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I understand Joe Burrow, et cetera, they're turning the page, a new franchise guy, but AJ Green's still on that team, Tyler Boyd's still on that team, 2 very, very serviceable weapons. And John Ross, even though John Ross didn't pan out to be, the greatest deep threat, even though he had that crazy 40 time, he's still on that team as well. And while I have him here in the top 10, just because, he's been compared to AJ Green, and if AJ Green gets injured again, then I'll see him, becoming very productive. I have him here kind of based on his potential because I don't think he's going to be playing that much. Of course, you guys have kind of gotten the vibe of how I feel about rookie quarterbacks. We got to wait to see what they're going to do. And I just don't know yet. Of course, I don't want to, jump too soon and say Joe Burrow is going to be the GOAT, like some others have. And of course, I don't want to say he's going to be a bust, right? But we're just going to have to see how Joe Burrow can adjust the NFL, see what happens with that wide receiver group. But T. Higgins, number 9. At number 10 here, guys, here's where I have Jalen Reagor, and I know this is a bit mean. Even I'm recognizing that. I definitely think that he could perform better than some of these other receivers on this list here, but it's going to depend on what the Eagles are doing. Now, Alshon Jeffrey still on the team. Do I think he'll still be on the team when the season starts? I'm not sure, honestly. I would lean towards him not being on the team, but if he's still on the team, if Deshaun Jackson's still on the team, it's going to be hard for me to picture, Jalen Reagor being super productive. But I think, I just have this inkling that the Eagles taking Jalen Reagor, over after a lot of people thought they'd take Justin Jefferson, they've got something to prove, right? And, I know they saw, his stats plummet in 2019. And a lot of people, they talked about that being because of, shoddy quarterback play. He dropped a ton of balls. He had, like I said, not the best quarterback play, and that definitely affects, your catch percentage. But, he had 9 drops and he had 6 fumbles. So that's concerning too. Control of the football is very, very important. Trust me, as a guy who watched LaShawn McCoy fumble a ton growing up in Philadelphia and having him on the Chiefs last year, I definitely prioritize taking care of the football. But, I think the Eagles, they drafted this guy with the hopes that they're going to get, the 2018 version of him, where he was hyper productive at over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, 72 receptions. And I think they're definitely going to take a shot at making him one of their top receivers. I don't think you're going to get this guy, take all that flack, and not hope to have him produce a ton. So while I think he's not going to do much early on, if Alshon, say, gets hurt again because his health has been a big issue or he's off the team, definitely boost Jalen Reagor's value here, up a couple spots. But as of right now, have him at number 10. Number 11, here is where I have J.K. Dobbins, and the reason I have him here, he has a ton of upside as well. He's a guy that I have lower than I would like, just because while I think he has a ton of potential, it seems like maybe a year too early. Right? Feels like maybe, after Mark Ingram is completely gone, then J.K. Dobbins is going to be super, super relevant in fantasy football, going to be a top fantasy football running back. But as of right now, man, that running back room is crowded because you got Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill is honestly a productive guy, and you got Lamar Jackson in the running back room. Sorry, guys, I know he's a quarterback. I'm not saying he's just a running back, but the man runs a ton and takes a ton of snaps away from the running backs with the read options and the design quarterback runs and the QB sneaks, all that kind of stuff. So it's hard for me to see J.K. Dobbins producing much unless he just wows us during the preseason, takes over Mark Ingram's spot, then he immediately becomes fantasy football relevant. But it's tough. He was a very productive at Ohio State, 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. 3.5 yards after contact. It was just, he's a solid running back, but it's just he's on a team with so many running backs. So he's going to be a guy you're going to have to stash and wait on, because I think he does have potential to be an every down kind of guy. So we'll have to see. Of course, hopefully everything pans out well. He'll become fantasy relevant in the future. I don't think he will be early on in the season though. At number 12, guys, here is where I have Cam Akers, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the reason why I have him here is because he's going to have to be competing with Darrell Henderson for that top spot, and even Malcolm Brown. I think, the LA Rams right now are looking for, the next Todd Gurley. I think they recognize where they messed up with the contract and Todd Gurley's health situation. Not that it's their fault, it's just an unfortunate series of events. And now they're looking for the heir apparent. They grab him in the second round, so they're definitely thinking, they're looking for their new guy, and hopefully they can have him fit in there. But, you have to temper expectations because I don't think he's going to be catching a lot of passes for the Los Angeles Rams. I think he has a lot of potential, and he could definitely take the starting spot. And honestly, out of a lot of the running backs here, I think even above J.K. Dobbins, he might produce more than him in the fantasy football season, but as of right now, he has a ton of competition. I think J.K. Dobbins is a better running back. That's why I have him ranked a bit higher. But I think Cam Akers honestly is in a little bit of a better situation where it's a little bit easier for him to take the starting spot. So definitely pay attention to Cam Akers and what the LA Rams are doing there. But it's going to be interesting to see. I have him here at number 12. Okay. At number 13, here is where I have Michael Pittman Jr., receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Not that I think he's going to have anything crazy of a fantasy football season, but I think he's a top 15 guy out of the rookies picked. I think he goes on a good team, solid roster, can help out that offense pretty immediately, I think. I understand that they have, Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal, but I think he could definitely compete with them to be a receiver behind T.Y. Hilton. I don't think, Pascal or Campbell are, anything crazy. And who knows? I think he could be at one of their top 3 wide receivers for sure. And with Phillip Rivers throwing the football, great offensive line, it could definitely be, something very, very productive. So keep your eyes on Michael Pittman Jr. All right. Here at number 14, my second to last pick here, I have Denzel Mims, New York Jets, guys. Okay. Basically, Denzel Mims, 4.38 40-yard dash, super agile guy, and, basically the replacement, not the replacement, but he's going to be competing with the replacement for Robbie Anderson, Brashad Perryman. I think he's a guy you definitely want to stash. If, Brashad Perryman doesn't turn out to be what the Jets thought he was going to be, they're going to look to lean on Denzel Mims. I know, he's a rookie, of course, it's very hard for rookie wide receivers to just come in and be, elite number 1 guys. But he's a guy I'm going to keep my eyes on just because, I have faith in Sam Darnold to step it up. This Jets offense needs to do something. They got things to prove. Like I mentioned before, they're trying to bolster the offensive line, give Sam Darnold more time to throw the ball. I think Denzel Mims could definitely compete with Brashad Perryman for production, and not just be a solid receiver alongside Jamison Crowder, and have some production. So of course, early on, we'll have to wait and see. Just like a lot of these other guys, it's going to be a flex guy. But yes, keep your eyes on Denzel Mims. And for the last spot here today, I'm going to pick an interesting one. This is where I'm going to put Keyshawn Vaughn, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I understand they got Ronald Jones, but, the Buccaneers, they took this guy in the 3rd round, and just because you're taking in the 3rd round, not the 2nd or 1st, doesn't mean you won't be productive. Just, as a Chiefs fan of recent memory, Kareem Hunt was selected in the 3rd round, and he was one of the best running backs in the league during his time on the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Buccaneers need a lead guy. Ronald Jones, really is not going to be, I don't think he's the guy. Dare Ogunbowale, I don't think he's the guy. I think, you draft this guy, Keyshawn Vaughn, you're trying to get this franchise running back, trying to get a guy who can take over lead back duties. If he does, he's certainly going to be fantasy football relevant, especially in that offense. We know how Brady likes to check down to the running back. We know that they're going to be running the ball, to sort of have a 2-pronged attack and not just be one-dimensional. And I think he can be very, very productive in fantasy football. Of course, early on, who knows, but I think this guy is definitely worth, stashing, definitely worth a draft pick at some point during the draft, in the middle or towards the end of the draft. If he's available, certainly a guy you can stash, and wait on, because I don't think, the running backs that the Buccaneers have now are anything too special. So, that's it for my rookie rankings for at least the top 15. Of course, I didn't speak on guys like Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, those big names, even possibly even Jordan Love. Who knows, what can happen. And I didn't speak on any of the tight ends because I don't think they'll fall into any of the top 15. But those are my top 15 guys. Hope you enjoyed that real quick. And after this, we're going to take a short break now. We'll talk about some more schedule stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Alright, we just got done our, preliminary rookie rankings for next season. And now I want to talk about something, I was recently reading up on NFL.com, an article about it was nine teams, who have a lot to prove next year. And I wanted to give you guys my take on the topic because I found this really, really interesting. It's a topic where, basically any fan of any team can feel like, their team has a lot to prove, if they didn't win the Super Bowl, right? So, I think it's pretty interesting. And I wanted to give you guys my top 5 picks, for the teams with the most to prove next season, the very immediate future. Why I want to do this is because, one, like I said, it's very, very interesting. And two, kind of, gives you another sort of storyline to follow. But I think I got some very, very interesting picks here. Of course, if you guys think your team deserves to be on this list or has a ton to prove, definitely leave that in the comments. Very, very interested in seeing what you guys have to say about that. But just to keep this, or just to start off here, I'm going to this is in no particular order, but I'll give you the team who I think has the most to prove, but I'll just start off in any random order. I'm going to start here, guys, with the New Orleans Saints. And the reason why, man, their past few seasons have ended in complete and utter heartbreak. We all remember the Minneapolis Miracle. We all know what happened that led to the, pass interference, penalty replays, and we all saw what happened last season after a 13-3 regular season record was all for naught, and the Minnesota Vikings upset the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs. I think now, with Drew Brees, riding off into the sunset, everyone knowing that this is his last season, him with all the records in the books, an underrated guy, a guy who's not talked about as one of the greatest ever, maybe because he doesn't have more than one Super Bowl, maybe it's because of his height, maybe it's because he's not, he's not as big of a name as these other guys and big of a market, but, New Orleans has a ton to prove. They're a team that's, we all respect them. I know everybody, everyone in the football community. Sean Payton's a solid coach. The New Orleans Saints have been a solid team for a while now. They're constantly in the playoffs, constantly in the postseason picture, constantly able to contend for the Super Bowl. but never quite getting there. And it's very, very disappointing, especially if you're a fan of that team. I'm a guy, I have my favorite team. I'm a diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan. Not like you didn't know that already, but, I'm a fan of football in general. So I'm a guy who roots for guys on other teams no matter what. As long as, I think that person's, a good guy or a great player. If I'm a fan of watching them play, I'm a guy who roots for guys on the other teams as well. Just for example, I'm a guy who loves watching Aaron Rodgers play. While I don't agree, mostly with his diva-ish attitude or, his cockiness or sometimes how he sort of puts the blame on teammates, I do enjoy watching him play. Another guy I love watching play also is Russell Wilson. I think he's great. I love watching Julio Jones play. So the list goes on, right? So, it just doesn't have to be a guy who's on my team that I root for. So Drew Brees, just to, get back on track here, Drew Brees is a guy that I root for. And I think the New Orleans Saints, after just not failing to get over the hump for the past 3 seasons, and it's been in pretty crazy fashion every time we're watching the heartbreak, 2020 is going to be their biggest season in recent memory for sure. They got a lot to prove. Drew Brees needs to, I think another Super Bowl would definitely solidify, put him more in the conversation of best ever. Not that I think Super Bowls should be a part of that and factor into that, but I know that he needs that because of the way the culture is surrounding that discussion for football. So, next here I have the Dallas Cowboys, and this is because they just constantly fall short. They had an 8-8 record last year, and they've almost become synonymous. The Dallas Cowboys name has become synonymous with the 8-8 record. Their team was very, very talented on paper last year. They're the biggest franchise in sports, basically. They're, Jerry Jones, always in the media, super wealthy. Like I said, had a ton of talent on paper. They underperformed, underachieved, and it was just pretty abysmal. I think now that you finally fired Jason Garrett, there's a new regime. Mike McCarthy comes in, added talent on offense, added some guys on defense. Got to figure out Dak Prescott's situation, but other than that, they need to prove that they're a solid team and can make the playoffs and win the division convincingly. I don't think winning the division at 9-7 or even 10-6 is going to be good enough for me. They need to win it very, very convincingly. I need 11-5, 12-4 season out of them to show that they're the top dogs if they want to prove that, all that talent on their team is worth it and that they're actually a talented football team, not just a team that can throw for a ton of yards and compile a bunch of yards and points when they're down 20. Okay. Number 3 on my list, the New England Patriots. And I think, guys, this here is the team with the most to prove. This is the one I'd probably say has the most to prove. Bill Belichick, I guess more than anyone, has the most to prove here. I would say even more than Tom Brady, right? If he can prove as a coach that he can win games without who many consider to be the greatest quarterback of all time, man, does that shake up the legacy of Tom Brady, at least in my opinion. Unfortunately, he hasn't shown any interest in signing Cam Newton. They missed out on Andy Dalton. They didn't trade up for a quarterback in the draft. And it seems like they're going to stay with Jarrett Stidham. He's going to have to prove that he is a genius and have Jarrett Stidham perform very, very well and prove that he doesn't need Tom Brady. If I understand, and it's not as bad because he has Jarrett Stidham, so I know he's going to have some leeway. We're not going to expect Jarrett Stidham to go out there and ball out. So he'll have, if he does have a pretty bad season, he'll have some sort of, excuse to fall back on. But I think Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots need to prove that letting Brady walk wasn't the wrong choice. Not proving to us that not drafting a quarterback wasn't the wrong choice. Not adding many pieces in the offseason, it wasn't a wrong choice. They have a ton to prove, especially, coming off of that season with the historic defense. They're definitely going to have to follow up with a similar season and hope that their offense can sort of get back on track. Okay. The next team that I think has something to prove, I'm going to say the Cleveland Browns. I think it's pretty obvious. The Cleveland Browns were a mess last season. Probably the definition of overhyped. clearly were not ready for that hype. Clearly we're not ready for that spotlight. The franchise, who has been known for sucking and losing for so long, clearly was not ready to be a winning team and didn't know what to do with talent, even though it slapped them in the face. Their roster is absolutely stacked. Baker Mayfield needs to get it together. This team needs to come together and perform to their full potential, and the talent that they have a ton to prove. And they're in a tough division because the Steelers and the Ravens aren't going anywhere. They're going to have to play really, really hard and win a ton of tough games to make the playoffs, but they have a ton to prove. Of course, and not even with just the winning wise, but to show that they're, a new culture, they're mature, they can handle the spotlight, they can handle the hype. And of course, I think, for Baker Mayfield, showing he could be a bit more professional, because I do have some problems with the way he handles some things. Now, the last team I have here, guys, for top 5, who I think actually, I probably put them behind the... it's tough because all these teams have a lot to prove, but the Los Angeles Rams, guys, for me, have a ton to prove. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and delivered probably the most boring Super Bowl I've ever seen in my life. To me, I'm a hater of the Rams. I'm not going to lie here. I'm a guy who, I'm not falling for the... young coach comes in, oh, he's a super genius, oh, look at him, just because he had one great season, right? I mean, he made the playoff. I think he made the playoffs, I believe, first season, Super Bowl second season, I believe, Sean McVay. But to me, I just never was truly impressed. I felt that team ran only through Todd Gurley too much, and you guys can see what has happened when Todd Gurley's no longer a factor on that team. Jared Goff has played worse. The whole team has played worse. In general, they have a ton to prove that, that Super Bowl run wasn't a fluke. They still have enormous talent on their offense, and defense. Of course, there's no Todd Gurley, but that team still has Robert Woods. That team still has Cooper Kupp. While I don't believe in Jared Goff, they certainly do, paying him a ton of money. They believe in him. And on the defensive side of the ball, you already know who's on that side. Don't even need to get into that. So, of course, they really had a bad Super Bowl hangover. I think they have a ton to prove as well. So the top teams I have with something to prove next season, guys, I got Patriots, Saints, Cowboys, Browns, and the Rams. I think all of these teams definitely are going to want to show the NFL world that, they are a force to be reckoned with. So, with that, guys, we're going to go into a short break, and stick around because we got plenty more for you as the show goes on. So we'll be right back, guys, after this short break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. And for this segment, guys, what I wanted to talk about is the recently released NFL MVP odds via the Caesars Sportsbook. Okay, I mean, it's pretty simple. I'll just get right into it, guys. The number one choice to win the NFL MVP award next season is none other than Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes II. Guys, actually, let me just run through a couple of the other quarterbacks on this list here. Lamar Jackson is the runner-up. Dak Prescott after that. Russell Wilson after Dak. Tom Brady after that. And Kyler Murray with the same odds as Tom Brady at 16-1. Guys, well, first let me just give you my take. Do I agree with this? Yes. Do I agree with the odds? Yes. Do I think that that's exactly how it's going to roll out? Probably not, because, I think out of the past, 4 out of the past 5 years, the MVP winner has been one who was one of definitely not the top favorite pick to win the MVP award. And actually, I know Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson both faced pretty crazy odds when they won the award. So definitely, this is not, end all be all. This is how it's going to pan out. But I agree with this because Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. It's just plain and simple. I know, I understand Lamar Jackson's greatness, but I think, I can kind of, I want to give my take on this debate here right now. I'm sorry that Lamar Jackson is nowhere close to Patrick Mahomes in terms of being able to, win the huge games, take over, and show that in the big moments, it's time to show up and be great at just about everything as a quarterback. I understand, guys. Lamar Jackson is an outstanding quarterback, yes. However, he relies too much on, Baltimore's run game to be successful, for himself to be successful. He relies a bit too much on his own legs to be successful as a, passer as well. I guess I should say, because I understand, Lamar Jackson is sort of revolutionizing the quarterback position at this point, right? Sort of how we saw Michael Vick. He kind of, bends that definition of what it means to be a quarterback, because, everyone thinks about a quarterback as a guy, throwing the football. And I understand, excuse me, that a quarterback has, can be able to run the football and things like that. But at the end of the day, the quarterback has to be able to throw the football. You can get by at the end of the day with a quarterback who is immobile but can, be a pocket passer. But you cannot get by with a guy who cannot throw the ball at all and can run the football really well, though, right? So just if you sort of get that example, you know what I mean? Your quarterback has to be able to pass the ball. So that's why when people talk about quarterbacking, they're going to worry about passing the football first, not running the football. For that matter, you wouldn't have to draft a quarterback, right? You just have running back take the snaps. So just for the guys who say, who sort of don't understand why people say he's a bad quarterback, the reason is, where he struggles passing. Now I understand, guys. I'm not saying he's a horrible passer. He showed us last year that he can do great passing the football. My problem was, when it came time to, show what's what happened in that Tennessee Titans game, right? I think he threw the ball, 50 times and still couldn't get the job done. It's sort of insane. And it just feels like, if you gave Patrick Mahomes 50 attempts to throw the football, I don't know, guys. I think he's going to have about 7 touchdowns, 400 some yards, and definitely a completion percentage better than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson had 31 completions on 59 attempts. And yes, he had 365 yards, but he only had 1 TD and 2 interceptions. Clearly, he did great on the ground. 20 carries for 143 yards. That's phenomenal. But the other running backs did a little bit of nothing. Mark Ingram, 6 for 22. Gus Edwards, 3 for 20. Yes, okay, great. He did great at running back position, but when it came time to be the leader and the quarterback, he didn't show up. He didn't show up against the Los Angeles Chargers either, and that's why his team hasn't made a Super Bowl in the past 2 years. You can make all the arguments you want. You can say, okay, Derrick Henry ran all over that defense, but Derrick Henry was running over everyone towards the end of that season. He was bowling over anyone he wanted to. He was a force to be reckoned with. So this wasn't just, a case of, he came out of nowhere against the Ravens. They knew what was coming, and they failed like so many teams failed before them. It's not like we didn't expect that to happen. What people did expect, though, is that Lamar Jackson would put on a show, and that he did not. He sort of did with his legs. Yes, of course, that was great and all, but that wasn't enough. And so that's why, guys, I think, Patrick Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in the NFL. You can, I understand the argument. Lamar Jackson's rewriting record books with his legs, but that's not, what being a quarterback is about. It's just that plain and simple. Now, what I don't agree with here is Dak Prescott being put over the likes of, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and even Tom Brady. I don't think at any point Dak Prescott will ever be the MVP of the league because I don't think he's the MVP of the Dallas Cowboys. I understand he put up a ton of yards. He had a great year. But we have to remember how many times, how many times was his team very far behind? How many times when they needed to, make the great throws, he missed the big throws, right? And I know that inflates the stats, and I understand, I'm a guy who's advocating for him to get paid, but I'm not going to ignore the fact that some of these stats are definitely inflated. I don't think, if the Cowboys, Seahawks, Cardinals, and Buccaneers all finish with the same record, Dak Prescott would be the guy who's most important to his team over Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, and even Kyler Murray. I just don't think so. So that is something I don't agree with there. I think, honestly, Dak Prescott maybe should be definitely behind Russell Wilson, maybe sort of tied at odds with Brady and Kyler Murray. I think Brady honestly should be at the bottom of the list because I don't think, with such talent on his roster, that he is just all of a sudden going to change life in Tampa. These guys were no slouches. Couple with 1,000-yard receivers. They're talented players. So he's not coming in completely flipping he's going to be like, a godlike figure. He's just a guy who's going to take care of the football and not throw 30 interceptions. So that's something there that I don't agree with. And I want to comment on the fact that, you don't see any non-quarterbacks, topping the list. And the reason why is because a guy like Christian McCaffrey is so clearly an MVP candidate. And it just feels like, if you're not a quarterback or a running back, you aren't winning this award, which kind of bugs me in a sense, right? Because, sometimes quarterbacks succeed because they have amazing wide receivers. But if the wide receivers have amazing years, you just say, oh, it's because he had the great quarterback, right? So it's sort of convoluted in that sense, and I don't like it. I wish it was easier for other skill position players to win this award, but I understand it. We have to remember, guys, a quarterback is the most important position on the field. He touches the ball every single offensive play. Of course, not if wildcat, et cetera, trick plays, but you get the gist of it. The guy is, commanding the offense. He's a leader. He's usually the face of your franchise, so it just makes sense that he is the most valuable player on your team. Of course, if a, subpar quarterback is carried by a defense, and they go win a Super Bowl, aka Trent Dilfer, he's not going to be the MVP, but more often than not, it's going to be a quarterback or a running back. And definitely, I think a guy like Christian McCaffrey needs to be in the running for this award because, my goodness, even though that team doesn't win games, they'd probably go 0-16 without him. So, very, very interesting stuff. Patrick Mahomes definitely should be the front runner for MVP. He's an absolute monster. Honestly, I understand that people want to make the argument that, he has all these weapons, et cetera, but you have to remember he did play a game in Denver, was looking pretty solid with the backups. And I think, honestly, when it comes time for, that offense to split up, go their separate ways, retirements, etc., he'll show the world, why he's the best quarterback in the NFL and get it done with, few weapons. So that's that, guys. We're going to take a short break and stay right there because we got more for you coming up next.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Alright, now, I want to get into an interesting little segment here to talk about some players who I've been thinking about who might be, pretty excited about this next season, and some others who probably aren't feeling as excited. It's similar. It's basically like winners and losers of the off season, I guess you could say. And I want to talk about these players because I think they're interesting figures. There's certain stories swirling around about them that I may or may not agree with. So I just want to give my take on their current situations. Well, first and foremost, I think one of the biggest people who hasn't had things go his way certainly is Cam Newton. Now, I talked about it on a couple episodes ago about how I agreed with Cam Newton. He was basically saying that he's just going to wait for someone's starter to get injured so he could come into the league healthy for to play for a team that wanted/needed him, where he could prove himself. And then a couple of days later, that statement sort of got backtracked, and he said he would be open to playing in a backup role for the right team. The situation right now is pretty sucky, for Cam Newton. He's been, posting videos about him working out, doing drills, but more and more jobs keep getting filled, and more often than not, it's a guy who we think is worse than Cam Newton, right? So it really does suck at this point, and, there's going to be no team that he's going to go to where he, is going to be a starter. At least for the general time being. We all know, Ryan Tannehill went to the Tennessee Titans, and I'm not sure how many people expected him to start, let alone go on that run that he did and almost make it to a Super Bowl, then get an extension the year right after. For the next season. So it's pretty insane, how that can happen. And, I could see Cam Newton doing the same thing. People have talked about, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He should, be the backup for Big Ben. Big Ben misses a whole season with the elbow injury. He's only getting older. Who knows what his health's going to be like this year. The backup quarterbacks they have now just are backup quarterbacks, nothing more. And Cam Newton has a potential, he could come in to Pittsburgh and be a very reliable starter. So that should be where he's going. But as of right now, he's a guy who definitely probably isn't looking forward to next season. Another quarterback I want to talk about, and this is kind of focused a lot on quarterbacks because, like I say, most important position on the field. Some people might think that Jarrett Stidham's time in New England is coming. It's his era, and that he might be, he definitely might be excited about next season, but I kind of see Jarrett Stidham here as sort of like a winner/loser. I don't really see him as a winner, just because, you have the chance to be a starter in the NFL. Of course, that's amazing. We're setting that aside. Playing in the NFL is amazing. You're a winner if you're an NFL athlete. You're a winner if you have that opportunity. But on a more simple basis, just saying, to be the quarterback for the New England Patriots, the amount of pressure that puts on someone, especially someone who didn't have the best showing when we saw him in action during the regular season and who got benched after throwing a pick six. And I believe that was against the Jets. The game was very, very lopsided. Jarrett Stidham has to, be the successor to the guy who many people consider the GOAT. That's pretty intense, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on this kid's shoulders. I know he's going to be living in that shadow. A lot of quarterbacks are for quite some time. So, just playing in that building, playing in that weather, it's already hard enough, you know what I mean? And to go after what Tom Brady has done for that franchise and become the starting quarterback, to me, it's kind of a losing situation, But if he can rise up to the challenge, of course, he'll come out a winner. Being the next face of that franchise is definitely going to be something special. But to me, right now, I'm not sure Stidham is. I think he has mixed emotions, let's say, for next season. Now, excuse me, another guy who might not be looking forward to next season Mitchell Trubisky, guys, I think that he won't be the starter in Chicago for much longer. I think maybe next season is probably his last season. We know that the team declined Trubisky's fifth-year option, and we know that he is not, he has not performed up to the level, at least his draft spot, right? So, Mitchell Trubisky's main competition right now, Nick Foles. I think Nick Foles, honestly, at this point in time, is a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky. Of course, Mitchell Trubisky has more, I guess, untapped potential, but he hasn't proved that he's, a leader or that guy that they need. So I really don't think this next season is going to be great for Mr. Trubisky. I don't see him having some sort of breakout year, and I think he's going to lose his starting job. And after this, he's going to, become a sort of journeyman, backup quarterback. So, of course, we'll have to see, but I think that that's where that's going, and I don't think he's all too excited about Nick Foles coming to town. One of the biggest losers, I guess you could say, of the offseason, definitely Jadeveon Clowney. Similar situation to sort of Melvin Gordon, where you think, you're valuing yourself at a certain number. Every other team does not agree with you, and you have a really hard time finding a place to go for the money that you wanted. And I know that he's going to end up accepting a deal that's nowhere near, I think he wanted $20 million a year, something like that. He's going to get a deal that's way less than that. He wasn't the most productive pass rusher. What he had 3 sacks last season. That's definitely not going to help any team want to, scoop him up for that, especially not for that price tag. He's still not on a team, and it's not looking good for him. So he definitely is a guy who's, well, I guess you could say he's going to look forward to next season a lot, because he'll finally be on a team that wants him, and, his mistake will be over. He doesn't have to stress about it anymore, but definitely a loser when it comes to this offseason. Definitely not the situation he wanted to be in. Now, one more player that I'll say is that, probably not too excited about next season, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. And I know it's going to be more long-term when he starts to, see, the negativity behind drafting Jordan Love. While I agree, that it's a good pick for the Packers, it was a terrible pick for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has admitted, he's on, the last couple of holes. He's down, the latter half of his career. Basically, what was the quote that he said? He said he's on the something hole golf term. I'm not a big golf guy, but yeah, the final 8, something like that. Basically, the sun is setting on his career. Sorry, guys. And this only, makes it that much more apparent. The drafting of Jordan Love is probably going to make, it puts some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. Should he start to falter? Should he start to waver and perform poorly? There's a guy that they can immediately try and test out, a young guy that they clearly have faith in, that they drafted in the first round, that they are going to want to develop into be the next franchise quarterback. Never mind the fact they didn't give him any receiver help. So he definitely is not looking forward to the near future with the Green Bay Packers, let alone, just next season. What the future holds for Aaron Rodgers, I think, is pretty uncertain. Feel kind of bad for him, but I mean, hey, if they want to move on from that attitude and the diva mentality at their quarterback position, this is the right move for the Packers. But it's just not going to be too good for Aaron Rodgers. So he definitely is one of the losers of the offseason. Okay, I guess, before I end the segment here, I did a lot of losers, a lot of guys who probably aren't excited, but let me tell you one guy who is excited. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, guys. I mean, I'm just going to keep hyping this guy up. He's going to be the best rookie for fantasy football next season. He ends up in an amazing spot, sort of like Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people ask the question, would Patrick Mahomes have been this successful anywhere else? And I feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire has fallen into that sort of situation. When Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl and NFL regular season MVP, asks for you by name to be drafted to his team, man, that's got to feel special. I can only imagine what they have in store for Clyde. Brett Veach, the GM of the Chiefs, has said They view him as a franchise guy, so I think, I know a lot of people, I also agree he'll be splitting time with Damian Williams, but I think the future is bright for him. I think it's going to be his team, not too far, maybe into not too far into the 2020 season. This will clearly be Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's backfield and team. So, with that, guys, we're going to take a short break before we get into our last segment. And so stick around and stay tuned.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Everybody, we enter the last segment of today's episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and today I'm in the show a little differently again, not doing any wishes or anything like that, but more so just want to talk about some in other news, something that I thought was very, very interesting, something I wanted to give my opinion about. We all know, Rob Gronkowski, one of the biggest shockers of the offseason was him coming out of retirement to play with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next season. Now, it's been, of course it shocked us all. I think after Gronk didn't come back last season, I didn't expect him to come back, ever again. I know, an article was recently published, or, James Harrison came out and spoke and said, excuse me. He said that Gronk was talking about a possible NFL return since last November. He knew about it. It didn't really surprise him. They were filming a commercial together, and that's when he had heard about it from Gronk. And that he was basically James Harrison said, at that moment I knew that's when he was going to come back. He was talking about it. He had that itch. His body was feeling better. He had healed up from being off for a year. And I think, it kind of makes sense, in my opinion. It's just, he finally felt better, and when you're not on that football field and you feel like you can go out there and do it after you've been doing it for so long at such a high level, you're definitely going to itch to return. But what I thought was most interesting about this was, he didn't come out of retirement, to play for the Patriots. He came out of retirement to play with Tom Brady. And I think that says a lot. And I think, that kind of throws a wrench into this whole, Belichick versus Brady type of debate. Gronk didn't want to come back to play for Bill Belichick. Gronk came back to play for Tom Brady, essentially. And I know he's going to be his teammate and, he's not his coach or anything like that. But that kind of says a lot. So to me, a lot of people, winning is great. Winning 6 rings, that had to feel unreal. Even just winning 1 Super Bowl ring for many has to, it's the dream of a lifetime. A lot of people don't get to realize, that goal, and see that come true. So it's something that's so coveted and so, emotional and touching and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, guys, as crazy as it sounds, winning does kind of get old, right? Or maybe I should say, winning the same way gets old. That's what it seems like. And I think it's very, very interesting. The Patriot way, I feel like it's something that, got old for these guys, and that's why Tom Brady was, excited to start that new chapter. Tom Brady has seemed very, very happy about his move to Tampa Bay. Gronk seemed very happy to come out of retirement to play with Tom. And I think, when you're winning that much and the magic is sort of gone from the first couple of times, you want to have fun. And fun is not synonymous with the New England Patriots. And I think it says a lot about the way they do things up there. Much respect to Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, that culture that they've created, that winning culture, all about hard work and doing your job. But we have to understand that these guys are human. These guys are, they want to have fun as well. I mean, look at it like this. I guess for a metaphor, if you're doing something, say you're, you work for a convenience store per se. I know this is, kind of way different, but you sell, you're a great salesman. You always, your sales or numbers are always good. I know that doesn't make sense for a convenience store, but just bear with me here. Just going for it. But say you're a salesman, you have great sales, but you work for a firm that's very, very strict. You have to wear, this attire, and you can only do this, and you can't be on your phone, and you can only take this lunch break when I tell you to, things like that. And then you see another salesman who, might not have as many sales as you, but he does well for himself. But he gets to do all those things as you can. He's allowed to be on his phone. They have a lot of casual Fridays and great benefits and things like that. It's sort of, like that. Tom Brady, who's done it for so long and, done it by this strict code and philosophy, just watched Patrick Mahomes light it up for 2 years and win a Super Bowl with an amazing offense and having fun with it. Not saying that, of course, that was, he watched Patrick Mahomes and out of jealousy was like, I want to do this. But, players seek excitement as well, sort of like we do in our lives. So it's easy to understand, why Tom Brady ended up leaving the Patriots, why Gronk went to join him. And it says a lot about their friendship and relationship. They in this article, about, James Harrison and Gronk and all that, they cite, a conversation, that, Brady and Gronk had when they had a little throwing session, and it just, just that sort of having that throwing session and that little conversation with, Brady sort of, gave Gronk that fire, and interest, to play football again. And Gronk had told him, he was definitely interested in the decision that Tom Brady was going to make. He didn't tell him to go play anywhere, but he definitely said, hey, I'm keeping an eye on it. So the fact that, their relationship is so tight, basically the point that I wanted to make is, it's very, very interesting. Says something about that Patriot way, and very, very interesting that, that seems like it can get old, and cumbersome to constantly be sort of like a robot for Bill Belichick, where you just do your job, play your best football. We're not here to have fun. We're here to work, and doing that constantly. I know 20 years is a ton of time, a long, long time. But it helps me understand, why some other guys, leave their teams much earlier in their careers. But still, why they leave their teams. Because sometimes, I do have trouble understanding, like, wow, man, how could this guy, he's been with this team for so long, or, his best friend's on this team, things like that. It sort of gives an interesting perspective on that whole thing. And I think it's very, very cool that these two have started a new chapter, not only together, but, with a franchise that is, known for not winning, giving themselves a challenge, not taking the easy way out. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting, and they definitely have earned some respect from me. Like I said, I know, guys, I'm a Patriots hater. I've slandered Tom Brady and the Patriots for the cheating and all those scandals, but they definitely got some respect from me for this. Gronk could have just came back to play for Bill and Tom with the Patriots, and Tom could have gone somewhere else, I think with some, a lot of people talked about the Colts with a better line, the Chargers with all those weapons, things like that. So I think it's very, very cool. And of course, not to mention, the LA, super big market, Las Vegas, things like that. So I think it's super cool what they're doing. Just want to get my thoughts on that, and maybe, help people see, maybe the Patriot way. It's not everything is chalked up to be for everyone. So very, very interesting. Cool stuff. And with that, guys, we're going to end the show for today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I know it's a little bit different. But the show goes on, guys, no matter what. Appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys leave a comment below. Hope you guys tell us what you love. Hope you guys tell us what you hate, because, of course, that helps. definitely follow us on all social media, guys. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That really helps us. And guys, I just wanted to show my appreciation for those of you that listen, that download the show. Can't wait for this football season to get started whenever it does. Just praying that it actually does get started and not canceled at any point. So stay safe, guys. Keep social distancing. We'll get through this together. And have a wonderful night, guys. We'll see you here next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.